Welcome back to Fable's Adventures. We know you want to get right into the story today, so we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. You can check out the description for links to the full text of the story and to the Fable's Adventures app if you'd like to start creating your own stories. Today's story is entitled The Weight of Ancient Warnings. 3 miles beneath the ocean's surface, in the deepest place on Earth, lies a secret that could save humanity, or doom it. Meet Orion Keyes, a marine archaeologist with an extraordinary gift. They can decode ancient languages no one else can read. For 3 months, Orion has been diving into Mariana's Trench, discovering crystalline vaults left by civilizations that existed before recorded history. Inside these vaults is knowledge that changes everything, a timeline showing that catastrophic geological events have destroyed advanced civilizations before. Mass extinctions, cataclysmic shifts, cycles of death and rebirth written in stone. And the next cycle is coming in 18 months. But Orion faces an impossible dilemma. Revealing the archive means governments, universities, and treasure hunters will tear it apart. The warning will be scattered, sold, dismissed as sensationalism. The knowledge could be lost before anyone takes it seriously. But keeping it secret means humanity remains unprepared for the catastrophe the ancients predicted with terrifying accuracy. Then corporate salvage operations arrive, led by Archibald Thorne, a man who seems to offer a third option, an alliance that could preserve both the archive and its warning. But can Orion trust him? And does it even matter when the timeline suddenly accelerates, revealing they don't have 18 months anymore? They have 3 months, maybe less. This is a story about the weight of impossible knowledge, the price of revelation, and what happens when you discover humanity has been living on borrowed time. It asks, if you held the key to survival in your hands, who would you trust with it? And what would you sacrifice to make sure the message isn't lost? Dive into the darkness with The Weight of Ancient Warnings.
The Weight of Ancient Warnings. The descent into Mariana's archive felt like falling through the throat of the world. Orion Keyes adjusted the pressure compensator on their suit, watching the depth gauge climb into numbers that most divers would consider suicidal. But Orion had never been most diverse. The abyss stretched endlessly below, a darkness so complete it seemed to have texture. Orion's submersible lights carved through it like fragile weapons, illuminating particles of organic matter that drifted like snow in this impossible place. 3 months they'd been coming here. 3 months of discovering that human civilization wasn't the first to master the seas, and might not be the last to fall. The crystalline formations inside the cave system had appeared first, jutting from the rock face like frozen music. But when Orion had touched them, something extraordinary had happened. The crystals had vibrated against their gloved fingers, creating patterns that resonated through the suit's sensors, patterns that, somehow, Orion could read, not in any language they'd ever learned, but understood nonetheless, as if the knowledge had been waiting in some dormant corner of their mind. The vaults had come next, dozens of them, sealed in waterproof chambers carved impossibly deep within the stone. Chambers that Orion's natural gift for decoding had revealed contained something far more valuable than gold or artifacts. A timeline. A terrible repeating timeline of catastrophic geological events that had destroyed civilizations before recorded history even began. And the current cycle was due to repeat in less than 18 months. Orion, I'm detecting something on the sonar. Atlas Crane's voice crackled through the communication system, steady as always. Atlas had been Orion's partner for 5 years, the only person Orion had allowed into this secret, the only person they truly trusted. Something big. On the eastern perimeter, about 2 kilometers from your position. Orion's stomach tightened. What kind of something? The kind that doesn't belong in the archive, Atlas said quietly. The kind that's anchored and actively running equipment. Industrial drilling equipment, Orion. They're not surveying, they're extracting. The submersible lurched as Orion's hands involuntarily gripped the controls. The Meridian Collective. It had to be. Archibald Thorne and his corporate salvage operation had been sniffing around the trench for months, buying permits, greasing palms in the Maritime Commission. They wanted the archive. Orion was certain of it. They didn't care about the knowledge or the warning the ancients had left. They cared about the artifacts, the prestige, the astronomical sums collectors would pay for pieces of lost civilizations. I'm heading to intercept, Orion said, already plotting a course. You know what this means, Atlas replied. There was no judgment in their voice, only the weight of understanding. If they find it, the archive is finished. Universities, governments, treasure hunters, they'll tear it apart. The chambers will be breached, the knowledge scattered, sold to the highest bidder. And the timeline the ancients encoded? Nobody will believe it. Nobody will prepare. Orion knew. They had spent 3 months knowing, and that knowledge was like drowning in slow motion. The ethical dilemma had been with them every waking moment, whispering in the darkness of their research vessel. Reveal the archive or protect it. Save the world from ignorance or save the archive from destruction. There was no third option, no path where everyone won. The ancients had known that too. It was written in the way they'd hidden the archive, in the deliberate isolation of the chambers. The submersible climbed through the water column, and Orion saw it before Atlas could describe it further, a massive drilling platform suspended from cables, its lights turning the water pale and sickly yellow. Industrial, efficient, utterly indifferent to what lay beneath. Orion's mind raced through the options. Sabotage the equipment, cut the cables, foul the drilling mechanism. It would be easy. Orion had the expertise, the access, the perfect opportunity. But it would also mean criminal charges, prosecution, a prison cell that would silence them permanently. The archive would still be discovered eventually, and Orion wouldn't be there to protect it. Or call in the authorities. File a report about the illegal drilling operation, bring down government agencies and maritime law enforcement. The archive would be protected by its very revelation, preserved under international law. But then it would also become public knowledge. The vaults would be opened by committee, the secrets distributed to institutions that had no context for understanding them, no wisdom for heeding the warning. Or do nothing. Let Meridian Collective drill. Pray that they found something before they found the archive. Pray that the ancient geological formations held the integrity they had demonstrated for millennia. The prayer felt obscene. I'm going to surface, Orion said abruptly. There's a communication buoy at the operations platform. I'm going to contact Thorne directly. Orion, that's... I know what it is, Orion interrupted. It's the only path that gives the archive any chance. Not a good chance, but a chance. The ascent took an hour. Orion's mind did dark mathematics the entire time, calculating probabilities and outcomes, none of them clean. The submersible breached near the platform's support columns, and Orion engaged the emergency beacon before climbing into the saturation chamber and beginning the decompression sequence. It was faster than protocol allowed, which meant nitrogen sickness and joint pain were probable, but Orion had made peace with pain months ago. The platform's deck was crowded with technicians and equipment. They barely glanced at Orion as they emerged, dripping and exhausted. The salvage diver was a familiar sight at deep water sites, and Orion's credentials were impeccable. Archibald Thorne's office occupied the platform's central tower, all glass windows and expensive furniture that served no purpose this far from civilization. Thorne himself was waiting when Orion pushed through the doors, a man in his 60s with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of chasing the ocean's secrets. "Orion Keyes," he said, standing. His smile was the smile of a man who had never been refused anything. "What a remarkable coincidence. I was just about to have people look for you." Orion's blood went cold. "How did you know you were here?" Thorne gestured to a satellite image spread across his desk. It showed Mariana's Trench in unprecedented detail. Orion's research vessel was clearly visible, as were the markers of the cave system beyond. "We've had geological surveys of this region for 6 months. We know exactly what's down there, Orion. The vaults, the chambers, the ancient technology. We've known for quite some time." The room seemed to tilt. "Then why haven't you drilled?" Thorne smiled wider. "Because we couldn't find anyone qualified to access what we've located. The ancient texts, the symbology, it's beyond our experts. But you, Orion, your reputation precedes you. A natural decoder of lost languages, a mind that can read symbols no one has seen in millennia." He paused. "We want to hire you, not for money, though we can offer that, not for prestige. We want to offer you something better." Orion's hands clenched. "And what's that?" "Control," Thorne said simply. "We've been trying to do this wrong, trying to extract, to study, to distribute. But that's not what these civilizations wanted, is it? You've had 3 months with the archive. You understand it in ways we never could. Help us access the deeper vaults, the ones your decoding can reveal. Help us understand the timeline the ancients encoded. And in exchange, you'll control how that knowledge is preserved and protected." It was the third option, the option Orion hadn't seen. "Why would you agree to that?" Orion asked slowly. "What's your motivation?" Thorne's smile faded. "Because I've read the preliminary reports, Orion. I've seen the chronological data. I know what the timeline predicts." He sat back down, suddenly looking older. "I have grandchildren. I want them to have a future. If there's a catastrophic geological event coming, if the ancients left instructions for survival, I want that knowledge preserved too. I want it where it can help people, not destroy them." Orion stared at him, searching for deception, finding only a mirror image of their own impossible burden. "How do I know I can trust you?" Orion asked. "You don't," Thorne admitted. "But I can prove my sincerity. I'm going to stop the drilling operation immediately. I'm going to transfer the permits and the site coordinates to your name, making you the legal authority over everything within the archive boundaries. And I'm going to place myself under your command with full transparency to every decision we make." "That's the only way you'd ever consider it," Thorne finished. "I know." The silence stretched between them like water. Orion thought of the vaults, the crystals, the ancient knowledge waiting in the darkness. They thought of Atlas, of the impossible choice that had seemed to have no good answers, and they thought of the timeline, repeating in cycles, warning of catastrophe. "I need to contact my partner," Orion said finally. "And I need to bring in experts, real ones, not corporate collectors, historians, geologists, linguists, people dedicated to understanding, not exploiting." "Done," Thorne said, and he picked up his phone. Orion left the office in a daze. They descended to the deck level, where technicians were already beginning the process of powering down the drilling equipment. The platform would be repositioned, the archive would be protected, the knowledge would be preserved. But as Orion looked out over the ocean, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, they felt something shift in the darkness below. A vibration, almost imperceptible, traveling through the water, the crystalline structures in the archive, resonating, responding. The radio crackled to life, Atlas's voice tight with fear. "Orion, something's wrong with the chronological readings. They've accelerated. The timeline, it's not 18 months away anymore." Orion's stomach dropped. "How long, Atlas?" A long pause, the kind of pause that contained the weight of worlds. 3 months, Atlas said quietly. "The cycle repeats in 3 months, maybe less. The ancients were wrong about the timing, or..." Another pause. "Or the modern world's industrial activity has sped up the geological process. Our drilling, our mining, our earthquakes from infrastructure. We've accelerated the cycle ourselves." Orion closed their eyes. Below in the archive, the crystals were singing a warning that was no longer a warning, but an alarm, a countdown to catastrophe that humanity had unwittingly triggered. And Orion, standing on Archibald Thorne's drilling platform, finally understood the true nature of the burden the ancients had left behind. It was never about choosing between silence and revelation. It was about accepting that the choice had already been made thousands of years ago by civilizations that had seen the cycle coming and tried to encode survival in stone and crystal. Orion opened their eyes and looked back at the tower where Thorne was making calls, mobilizing resources, believing they had time to prepare. "Atlas," Orion said quietly, "I need you to make me a promise." "Anything," Atlas replied. "If something happens to me, if I can't see this through, promise me you'll make sure the real timeline gets out, not the one we prepared, not the diplomatic version, the truth. 3 months, Atlas. We have 3 months to change everything." "I promise," Atlas whispered. "And Orion, you're not going to be alone in this anymore, not after tonight." Orion looked back at the dark water, at the faint glow of the archive far below, and felt the weight of impossible knowledge settle more firmly on their shoulders. But for the first time, they also felt something else. The weight of alliance, of partnership, of a shared burden that might actually be bearable. The descent into Mariana's archive had been a fall through the throat of the world. But perhaps, Orion thought, there was a reason the ancients had placed their knowledge so deep, in a place so isolated and beautiful and terrible. Perhaps they had known that only someone willing to drown in darkness could learn to see in it. And perhaps, Orion thought, as the submersible prepared to descend once more, that was exactly the kind of person the world needed now.